Hi everybody and welcome to the Newton Baby Living, Newton Baby Talk and Newton Living Facebook Live for some tips and tricks to help your kiddos be more safe this summer. It's such a joy to be here and I'm excited to kind of take some of my tried and true ways of navigating the water for children and pass them along. My name is Alli Jo Houck, and I own a swim school in San Diego, California. I have been teaching swim for 25 years, which is wild to think. I'm 41 and started teaching kiddos to swim when I was 16. Recently a dad had asked me, how many kids do you think you've taught? And we laughed about it when I kind of came back to him the next day and gave him the number of probably around 10,000. So it's something I have a lot of experience with, and I know so many of you as parents are looking for ways to help navigate your children through the process of learning to swim and learning to be safe around the water. All right. So I just want to jump into kind of my background a little bit, and then just some thoughts that I have around swim safety. I have not invented this acronym that I'll be sharing, but I do want to speak into it as somebody that has taught a lot of kids water safety over the years. So I also just want to say thank you to both Siesta Surf and Newton Baby Talk and Newton Living for putting this together. I think it's such a powerful thing to equip parents with. So I own a swim school in San Diego called Alli Jo's Swim School. I've taught swim for, like I said, 25 years. And we have a team in San Diego that teaches all over the county, and we teach about 1,500 to 2,000 kiddos every year. So there's nothing we haven't seen when it comes to teaching water safety. I'm also on the Prevent Drowning Task Force, or I have been in the past here in San Diego, and I'm a resource for them when somebody's had a non-fatal drowning, to be a swim school that will help equip that kid or that family as they come through a pretty traumatic experience. The ABCs of swim safety. There's an acronym that's used in a lot of these different groups that talk about swim safety, and that acronym is ABC. So the first is adult supervision. Second is barriers, and the third is classes. Obviously, my experience is going to be heavy on the swim classes, but I do want to speak into those three things today and help you. Hopefully, by the end of this, you're feeling like you have some more tools in your back pocket that you can use with your own children. So the first is adult supervision. The biggest thing when you're looking at teaching or being with kiddos around water is visibility, right? You want to be able to see your kiddo and make sure that they're safe. So we want to watch our kiddos in the water without distraction. I think, we live in a time where a phone is in our back pocket, and we are highly distracted as individuals, but we want to make sure that our eyes are focused on our kiddos when they're in the water. The best thing is to be in the water with them, of course, and to be holding them and helping them and guiding them. When do the major scares happen around water safety, or when do drownings happen? Or in my experience, it's happened in very distracted environments. So like the big summer party, the Airbnb with family in town, where you get a big Airbnb and it's a new pool and a new surrounding and everyone's barbecuing and having a great time, and then somebody takes their eyes off the pool. So kind of our first thing that I encourage people with is water watcher tags. So I'll show you, I have a couple here. This is a water watcher tag that's put out by a group named IPSA, which is a group of like pool service members that care about water safety. So it's something that you physically hold or wear at a party. And what that does is that it gives ownership, right? You've taken on the mantle of, hey, I'm watching the pool for this party or this group. And then when you have to leave the area or go to the bathroom or grab a drink, you are physically handing off this lanyard to another person who then takes on that mantle and says, yep, I'm now watching the pool, and I will be taking on that mantle, that responsibility. Obviously, the goal is that a lot of adults are watching the pool and everyone's watching their kids and their friends' kids. But I think what happens sometimes is that folks will assume wrongly that somebody else has got it. And if we're all assuming and nobody's really watching the water, then that's when some really scary things can happen. I think I think when I first saw these, I thought, oh, that's a little cheesy for me to wear a lanyard at a pool party. You can hold it, you can have it in your pocket if you're clothed, but I think the idea of physically wearing something really changes our mindset around the responsibility of it. There's also one that's like this. Obviously, this is big. You pop this off, and it becomes this card and a bracelet. So, yeah, the water watcher tag is like always number one when you talk to like a expert on preventing drowning. They talk about water watcher tags. So you wear this around your wrist, or you hold this or wear this on your neck. But what you're doing is you're saying like, I've got it. I'm watching the water. I'm like, for this party in particular, I'm the lifeguard. So the water watcher tag's awesome, and really helps to prevent drownings. The second thing is visibility when it comes to swimsuit colors. So there's this visual, and I hope we can put it in the comments, but it's this like water visibility where you can see different swimsuits and how they show up in the water. So one of the reasons that Siesta Surf and I have really synced up in our communication together about water safety is with their swimsuit colors. So their swimsuits are really bright, and I have a 9-year-old daughter who wears them. So if you look at these, you're seeing like bright pink color, bright orange. And when we look at this visual, these like neon colors are what show up in the water. Another Siesta Surf suit that my daughter has is this one, this like bright pink and green, and they show up really well against the bottom of our pool. She's 9, she's a phenomenal swimmer, but I still care and want to model that these bright colors matter. So I think, it can be very trendy to have these like beigey colors, but I think when it comes to swim lessons and swimsuits and time in the water, in lakes or the ocean or pools, rivers, we just want to make sure that our kiddos are wearing those brighter swimsuits. Just as a caveat, I met the Siesta Surf founder when I went to visit one of our swim lessons, and her daughter was taking lessons with us. So I can speak to their bright swimsuits, and my, I personally patronize them as a client, and then they have patronized us as well. And I think that's just a fun, not only in San Diego, but overall a really cool collaboration to have two people that care deeply about swim safety come together locally in San Diego and then here with you all. Okay, so next I want to talk about visibility in the hot tub. So when I was 17 and just getting started teaching swim, I taught some toddlers in a swim class, and at the very end, the last day, I do these 2-week sessions. And on the last day, the mom came to me in tears and was so grateful for all that her kids had learned, and then shared with me a story. And it's obviously a massive story for their family, but her oldest kiddo had died in a hot tub at a party where the jets and the bubbles were going and nobody saw her kiddo underwater. And she was sharing how, like, although she had lost her oldest son, she felt empowered now getting her toddlers in swim lessons. And that really marked me. And it also gave me the heads up around, jets and bubbles on in the hot tub. I think they're great. I love that massage on my back as well. But I think it's important if you've got kiddos in the hot tub. They had actually some adults in the hot tub, and the kiddo went under and they missed it. And then he couldn't be revived. So I think, in the same vein of adult supervision, visibility in swimsuit colors, watching your kiddos in the water, and then visibility in a hot tub or whatever medium of water you're in is super important. Next is one of the bigger hot topic that I get asked all the time, probably every other day. I get asked by a parent about floaties or water wings or puddle jumpers. And I know that for a lot of parents, this is something that is top of mind and a question you all have. So as a professional that teaches swim, and I have a hard time drawing hard lines and saying absolutely not, but when it comes to water wings, floaties, puddle jumpers, my answer is no. My answer is to avoid them. Why? So there's several reasons. The first reason is it causes false confidence. When I get a kiddo in my swim class that has spent time in floaties or puddle jumpers, I can tell that kiddo has been in them by the way that they do not respect the water. So those are the kiddos where you turn and they just throw themselves in the pool because they've been wearing a flotation device in a pool that has made them pop up immediately, that doesn't force them to get their face wet, that teaches them that the opposite of what's reality, right? That they don't need to kick, they don't need to get prone in the water, they just can kind of bob around. And ultimately what that does is that teaches them like a false confidence. So if you can imagine a 2 and 3 year old and their version of reality in that moment, they're not recognizing that is what gives them that superpower. So when it comes off, right, when the parent unhooks it, that kiddo is not registering that they can't do the same things anymore, that things have changed and shifted. And with that, it's a real bummer because it also, not only does it teach false confidence, but it also teaches bad positioning. So if you can imagine, I'll use my pen, but we want a kiddo to be swimming horizontally in the water with their face down, scooping and kicking and moving like this in the water. Puddle jumpers teach your kiddo to be upright in the water, right? Their head is up, their feet are down, and they're bobbing along. With that, they will use their feet in the forward before their body to kind of pull themselves forward. So they're kicking in front of themselves instead of behind themselves. And their arms are held back by puddle jumpers. So they're not using their arms to scoop really. They're kind of low or maybe like paddling a little bit. And those kiddos, it takes 3 or 4 days to untrain that muscle memory. So I know it feels controversial to say like, hey, avoid those, never start your kids in them. But I think between the bad positioning and the false confidence and lack of respect for the water, it really is such a bummer when kiddos have spent a lot of time in floaties. They're not used to doing any kind of bubbles or navigating their face getting wet. And it's a real shock to the system when those come off. And a lot of people will be like, oh, they're so attached to them. Of course they're attached to them. They've been giving them this power in the water that is not natural, that they now need to unlearn some bad habits. So obviously an exception for that would be vests, for like a life vest for boating, like in rivers, in lakes, in oceans, in open water. A vest is obviously a win and should be used. But the floaties, especially that hold their arms out to the side and are in the pool, I would speak against. I would say let's not use those. Um, and then ultimately, we, with the whole, adult supervision, ultimately you do not want your kiddo or yourself to swim alone. That's like a tried and true water safety tip, is never swim alone. Let me see how we're doing on, if there's any questions around that. We can save questions till the end too. Okay, next up is barriers. So A is adult supervision, B is barriers. Barriers are those things that cover up the water or prevent kiddos from getting to water when you're not around. So that would be gates, alarms on doors, and covers. At the pools that we own 2 pools in San Diego, and they both have the automatic pool cover, which is a keypad. You hold down, a button, and you cover the pool completely. It's on like tracks, and anyway, it covers up all the water, and it can be walked on. If someone were to miss it and walk on it, it would be okay. Those are an expensive system, but for our 2 pools, we have to have those in place, and they're great. And yeah, the others would be like gates that kids, can't open. And then gates should be, in new pool builds, we went through this where they have to be self-closing and self-latching. So, right, that if a gate gets opened, it also will close and latch on its own. Yeah, so that's kind of all I have to say about barriers. If you all have questions about those, happy to answer them. And then finally, the thing that I'm most passionate about is swim classes for children. My opinion of an ideal swim class that you could be looking for your kids is one that's in a less distracting environment. If you're in a place that's really loud and there's a lot going on, I think kiddos are often distracted in those places. The other thing would be a small class size. I think sometimes people think that a private class is the best class, but I find that kids learn best when they have a peer to help challenge them and engage them. And when I have friends that don't live in San Diego that have, went to college with me and then have moved somewhere else, I tell them to look for those things. I tell them to look for small class sizes, a less distracting environment, but also look for an intensive. The classes we teach are in a 2-week intensive. So we do like a Monday through Thursday for 2 weeks. So that's 8 lessons. Why? Why an intensive? Because kiddos start stacking skills, right? So day 1, they're learning bubbles, getting their face wet. They're learning how to be prone on the water, that thing that we talked about earlier of being flat on the water, horizontal versus vertical. They're learning how to navigate the side, how to do a back float. They're learning these things. But if you wait a week before the next lesson, a lot of those things get lost, and fear and anxiety can build. And so we like to do back-to-back lessons and really maximize what your kiddo can learn at a certain age. And there are schools all around the country that do the same thing we do, that teach these intensive 2-week classes. The other thing is that when you space out lessons and do once a week, sometimes there's instructor turnover, and so you want to be able to have your kiddo build trust with somebody, learn some skills, and then stack those skills with that same trust built in. So oftentimes we'll get people that come from other swim programs, and their complaints are, we've been there forever. It's been this ongoing auto pay. We're 5 years in and my kiddo can't swim, right? And part of that's in the structure of maybe their business model of, the financial side of that, of you being on auto pay. But maybe it's also because of the once a week, like the kiddo just hasn't had a chance to build real skills that stick. With that waiting, that week to week, those are all opportunities where your kiddos are on water and can't swim. And so I think when it comes to swim safety, as a owner of a swim school, I feel the urgency to get kiddos water safe as quickly as possible. So what does that mean? That means that, like, in those 2 weeks, I'm trying to maximize what your kiddo can do, but I'm also trying to make it fun so that they want to come, So one of the things that we do, and that I would encourage a friend to look for in a swim school, is a place that emphasizes safety, but making it fun. So I want to give some examples of that we do, that you can do with your kiddos, that I think would really pay off. So one of those things we do is that we make everything a game. So things like, if your kiddo was on the side of a pool and accidentally fell in, and what would they do in that situation? So right, that's a massive safety concern, but we call it birthday party. So we pretend to eat some cake, and we talk about we open a present, and they say, oh, I got a toy tractor. And then we say, okay, if you're ever at a pool party and somebody accidentally pushes you in, or you slip into a pool, or a doggy's running on the deck and accidentally hits you and you go into the pool, what do you do? And we teach kids, oh, I need to turn around and grab the side. Whatever side they fell in from, the side's pretty close by, right? So that they turn around and swim back and grab the side. So we're not calling that a drill or those types of things, but we're saying, like, we're playing birthday party. We're playing out the scenario. And I think, we have a lot as parents, as a mom, I have some different scenarios that give me anxiety about my own kiddo and her safety. And so sometimes it's best to just approach that fear and play out the scenario. So another, game we play is called Overboard, where if a kiddo, we say, okay, pretend you're on a cruise ship, or, like a boat in San Diego Harbor, and the boat has a fire on it. And then we say, okay, jump in the ocean, and we tread water. So for kiddos that are, have learned to tread water, we play that out. We tread, we go into a back float, we tread, and then we swim to another rescue boat. And what we do is we're saying, like, hey, let's play this out. Let's imagine kind of the, for a parent, what might feel like the worst case scenario. And let's be equipped in what we would do in that scenario. And the crazy thing is that all the time we're hearing from parents saying, we were at a birthday party and my kiddo fell in and he knew exactly what to do. Or a dog, actually, I just had a kid that I taught, and the mom's like, you wouldn't believe this. I know you play fluffy doggy, where you pretend that you're a dog and you accidentally knock them in the pool, but dogs at parties, sometimes they're concerned because there's all these kids playing in the pool and they run back and forth on the deck. And my kiddo actually got pushed in, and they knew exactly what to do. So I think it's okay and probably good, to play out these worst case scenarios, but in a way that kids feel like, oh, I know what to do. I don't have to decide in the moment after I've fallen in all my clothes and I don't know what to, I know what to do. I know to turn around and come right back to the side. Speaking of that, there's some different benchmarks of safety that we look for, and you can you'll know where your kid falls in these, right? It's the first benchmark of safety is the ability to get the side should they fall in. The second benchmark of safety for us is their ability to get a breath so that they can lift their head up and get air if they need it. And then the third benchmark of safety is treading water and being able to do those transitions. So that's more of like that game of Overboard, of I can tread water, I can look around, I can make a decision, I can put myself into a back float and save my energy. And we live in a beach town, and so we really have to play out the boating scenarios. And I know you all are spread all over the country, but there are lakes and rivers and oceans and different, and pools, of course, that it's just good to play those things out with our kids and give them the tools they need. Okay, so some objections I hear to swim lessons that I just want to kind of address is, sometimes I hear parents say, like, I don't know, or I don't think they're ready. And my argument would be like, when is a kid going to be ready? I think that's a lot of responsibility to put on a kid, of if they say if they're ready, or if you don't feel like they're ready for swim class. I would say, like, we also need to be ready for water, and water is kind of all around us. So that's a hard one. I hear the parent's heart, and that they just the second thing they usually say after that is like, I don't want to traumatize them. And I think a good teacher is a guide, right, that will help bring them through and not cause trauma, but cause equipping. So yeah, it's empowering really to face a fear. And I would say the trauma actually comes from when there's a really serious accident and they don't know what to do, or they see a peer go through something. I would say that's where the trauma lies. The trauma doesn't lie in the learning to swim portion. Okay, and then one of the questions that came in before we started this live that I wanted to address is, before official swim classes begin, what are some things that we can do to equip kiddos? And that's a great question. I love it. I think, we start our swim classes at 2 years old, and before that, there's absolutely plenty that you can do. One of them is like exposure to the water. So when a kiddo is taking a bath, even as an infant, that when you're rinsing out their hair, you rinse it out, but then you kind of let some water just dribble over their face. When they shower, and you're watching them, you encourage them to let the water hit their face, that you're not shielding it all the time and making sure water doesn't touch their face. The other is, physically getting in the water with them in a pool, teaching them not to drink the water, having them close their lips and modeling all these things like, we go, and having them dip their lips in and show you that their mouth is dry. Learning bubbles in the bathtub, blowing bubbles out of their mouth first, and then as they get a little older and understand, we teach humming bubbles, which is they hum, and this is like something I wish everybody knew, but it's such a cool and interesting skill. But humming, if you hum, and you go underwater, if you just continue to hum that same sound underwater, bubbles naturally will come out of your nose. And if bubbles are coming out, water can't go in. So kiddos are always, really afraid of water going up their nose. And that is a very uncomfortable thing. So teaching your kid to hum and kind of like just having them dip their nose under the water and they'll see bubbles come out. And when I'm teaching a kid how to hum and make bubbles that way, I'll say, wow, that's a really cool trick, way to go. And then I'll show them how I do it. I let the bubbles come out. So humming, and if you think about your nose, the holes in your nose are quite small. Bubbles come out nice and steady and slow, versus our mouth, it's quite big, and so or wah, it's all that air comes out very quickly. So it helps with breath control to do nose bubbles. Another thing you can teach kiddos is how to move along the side of a pool. You can teach them, I've seen people do this a lot with infants, is kind of this side to side, like dipping their face into the water and having the water touch their face, getting it close to their lips, but just familiarizing your kiddo with water, holding them prone, like tipping their shoulders forward and having them kick where their kickers are on the top of the water and splashing. Those are all things that you can do with your kiddo long before they start swim lessons that will just make them more successful and get more accomplished when they do start lessons. I think I've already touched on this several times about empowering children, but I also want to empower you as parents that if you don't know how to swim, putting yourself in swim class is an incredibly empowering thing to do in life. I think that, I've taught we teach a lot of adults to swim, and it's after usually we've taught their kids to swim and they're like, oh, I really need to do this. Like, I need to be the one that knows how to do a rescue if they ever need me, but I also want to learn how to swim to just enjoy water. I have a story about that. I taught the adults that I teach are just so cool, because it's been this fear they've had for 20, 30, 40 years, 50 years, and they're addressing it, and it's just such a therapeutic experience. But one of the adults I taught was really afraid of her kiddo being at the bottom of a pool. which obviously is a top fear for all of us as parents. But we just kind of addressed it and played out this scenario the same way that we play out scenarios in children's swim lessons. So we worked on the action of diving in. Then we worked on the action of pulling yourself to the bottom of a pool. And then finally we worked on putting something heavy at the bottom of the pool. And so she learned in our time together to dive in, pull herself down, grab, we did a couple heavy bricks, and then she swam them up, swam them to the side. And this is someone who didn't know how to swim that, told us, this is my ultimate goal, that if I ever saw a kid that needed me at the bottom of a pool, that I would be able to go and get them. And so we just we worked on all the skills and stacked them up to make it so that she could swim to the bottom. And how empowering is that, right? The other story I have is of an adult who was a marriage and family therapist, and he wanted to surprise his wife, and they were going on a trip to Thailand, and he wanted to jump off a long-tail boat. And he said, we have 4 kids, they've all done swim lessons, and it's been this elephant in the room that I don't know how to swim, and it's guided our lives, right? I couldn't, we didn't do family vacations that involved pools or swimming because I just didn't feel confident in it. We just did other things. And so he reached out and came on his lunch breaks to learn to swim. And then the goal was that he would surprise his wife on I think it was a 20-year wedding anniversary trip to Thailand. And he jumped off a long-tail boat and surprised her, and they just had the most incredible vacation. But he approached that fear. And the cool thing he did was he emailed me after the vacation with pictures and videos and was so stoked. But one of the things he said was that was actually the most therapeutic experience for me. Of all the therapy I've done, of all the therapy I've led, to be able to face a massive fear and get through it was really empowering. So I want to make that caveat that there might be people listening right now that are like, hey, not only do I need my kid to learn how to swim, but I need to learn how to swim. And I just want to encourage you to do it, to go for it, because it is so empowering and so therapeutic. I've got kind of 2 more things, and then I'll open it up for questions. One of the things is about autism. So we at our swim school have a great reputation with the autism community here in San Diego, and part of it is the small class sizes and the less distracting environment, and the intensity of the lessons. But I love teaching kids with autism. They are at the risk is 160 times more for drowning than their neurotypical peers. And that is a crazy stat that is very sobering. When I have a kid with autism, I've noticed that they love just being underwater, right? They just love being submerged. It's a very sensory experience to be covered in water. And they're drawn to it. Kiddos with autism are drawn to the water because of the sensory experience of it. There's also, the elopement component of autism, where they, will leave safe situations and want to be in the wandering off component of kiddos with autism. But I do want to say that if your kiddo has autism, you want to get them in swim lessons early and often. You want to mitigate that risk, and yeah, I think that I make a very big effort as a business owner to never. I don't want to ever focus on fear or drowning or those types of things to the extent of I don't want to scare people into learning this skill. But I do want to say that because of that stat, I think it is such an important priority for families with kids with autism. And yeah, I would just encourage you to not delay on those on getting signed up for swim lessons. And then finally, my last kind of thing is CPR classes. I think that, again, it's that being empowered as a parent, and don't leave CPR classes for the pros like lifeguards. You know, being up to date on your own CPR certification as a parent is just such a gift to your community, to the people you spend time with, that you would know what to do and how to jump into action if ever needed, and also just so great for your own family. So, okay, I think I said this earlier, but what I lack in technical skills, I make up for in teaching swim. But I do not see comments on here. I'm gonna try to refresh this and see if I can figure this out. But if you all have any questions, please send those in and I will answer them as best I can. Bear with me as I try to figure out how to refresh to be able to see your questions. Oh, here I am talking. Let me silence this. Okay. Oh, amazing. Y'all have been commenting a lot. Okay, so what age do we start swim lessons? So we start lessons for our swim school at 2 years old, mainly because of separation anxiety being such a factor. And we teach in backyard pools all around San Diego County. We rent pools and backyards and teach there. So we have made a policy. We used to start around 1, and now we start at 2, just because separation anxiety is so strong, and it can be a very loud experience for neighbors. But you can start kiddos before 2 years old, absolutely, in swim lessons. We start at 2, and before that, I highly encourage like mommy and me classes, because they are, you know, if you don't feel equipped to do the things I talked about earlier, then mommy and me classes are great, just for familiarizing them with the water. But the second you can get into a class where you have an instructor that is going to teach them to swim, I would recommend that. Yeah, I think I addressed that. ISR. Yeah, we don't do ISR at my swim school, because, well, we teach kiddos that if they fall in, not to flip to their back or not to get air by flipping to their back, but instead to turn and get the side. And we teach kids to come up for a breath, just straight up out of the water and then back down into the water. So we don't teach that prone, flip to the back, and then prone again. But I always say, like, anyone who is teaching a kid to be more safe in the water, I bless those people. There, when people are looking for ISR lessons specifically in San Diego, I refer them out to those lessons if that's what they have their heart set on. So yeah, I think ISR is great, and yeah, I think that there's a lot of value in any kind of water safety classes. A couple things I did get questions about. I threw this out to our, I know you guys are a big group at Newton Living or Newton Baby Talk. We have like 3,500 in our Instagram, and I threw out that I was going to be doing this and asked them if they had any questions, so I'll answer a couple of those. One was about swim diapers. I highly recommend the reusable swim diapers with the tight waist and the tighter legs, because what's the point of a swim diaper but to keep in accidents, and so oftentimes those reusable ones don't work, right? They just come up the back, they come out the sides, and it's as much of a disaster as not wearing one at all. So I recommend these reusable ones. This one's from Speedo. someday I hope to create a swim diaper as well that has like some different features to it. But this is a great one. The other is goggles. People have asked about goggles. I think goggles are totally fine. These are from Costco. There was a Costco 3-pack. Speedo and Tyr, that's the company, that's TYR, but it's pronounced Tyr. Those companies make great swim goggles. They're awesome, and we want to make sure that kiddos know what to do without goggles. And so when we go through those scenarios, like I talked about, like birthday party or that fluffy dog kind of scenario where if a kid falls in, we make them remove their goggles. That can be hard sometimes for kiddos that are really sensitive to the water on their eyes, but they do need to know how to navigate that. So we'll try oftentimes to not have kids start out with goggles and get used to it and be a proficient swimmer, and then when they spend a lot of time doing laps and things, we allow them in our school. One of the things that we use sparingly in our swim lessons are fins, and so that's part of the giveaway that we're doing with Siesta Surf in this chat. But these swim fins are awesome. They're this like silicone rubbery flexible fin, and they help to straighten out kids' kicks. So they make them have this like really nice smooth kick. They give them a little boost, so kids that we're trying to help them learn how to get their breath, it like helps to just kind of give a little boost, and then we take them away and teach them, they just have to kick a little harder and be a little smoother with their scoops. But it's a great accessory in learning to swim is fins, and there are other companies that do that. We like these the best because they float, so if they fall in off a boat or on a lake, they don't sink to the bottom, they float on the top. And then, as I shared earlier with the bright colored bathing suits, in terms of gear, we like these bright suits from Siesta Surf. And then just to review really quick, the only other accessory that I talked about in this is the water watcher tags, and these can be found on the PreventDrowningFoundation.org. You can buy one. I'm sure there's some on Amazon. There always is, right? And then they're just such a handy thing. We give these out at our swim lessons for anyone who's a pool owner. All right. Any other questions? Thank you, Newton Living, for posting these links. This is rad. Okay. Well, you guys, thank you for having me. It has been a total pleasure. I can't believe that I spoke for 44 minutes, but I just want to thank you all for the opportunity. It's something that is really a pleasure to help equip parents in this area. And I know, it is July. We are around pools and ocean and lakes and all sorts of things, rivers, and we just actually went on a family vacation and went whitewater rafting. And it is just so fun to enjoy the water and be safe in it. And I just want to encourage you to make the next step in your journey of water safety, whether that is buying a bright colored suit, whether that is putting your kid in swim lessons, whether that's ordering a water watcher tag for your own parties. I know it's become popular as well to hire lifeguards for parties, and I think that's amazing and absolutely necessary if you're having a big party. Having a professional watching the water is also a great tip that I forgot to mention. But anyway, I could talk about this for days, but thank you for having me, Newton Living, and wishing you all a really fun summer ahead.